A dishwasher is one of the most critical components. When it's down, or if you don't have the right dishwasher selected, or if it's not working properly, it can completely cripple a service. So today we're gonna get nerdy about dishwashers. We're gonna talk about the different types of dishwashers, what you need to consider when purchasing a dishwasher, and what might be the best dishwasher for you. So let's get started. Within the dishwasher, there's subcategories like high temp, low temp, etc., which we're gonna get into today. There's really 4 main categories of dishwasher types. 1, an undercounter dishwasher. 2, a door type dishwasher. 3, a conveyor type dishwasher. And 4, a flight type dishwasher. Undercounter dishwashers are perfect in multiple different applications. Where they really thrive are small footprint restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, dishwashers specifically at bars, as well as even other applications like a daycare, or even putting an undercounter dishwasher at your wait station if you're a high volume restaurant. They are typically under the 34-inch height, which is a typical counter height by ADA regulations, and they're 24 to 25 inches depending on the model that you select, left to right. You're not gonna be a 150 person restaurant using that as your main dishwasher. But if you have it at your bar or you have it at your daycare, the rinse cycle typically is between 90 seconds to 180 seconds. So as you're working through your service, you can continue load, put in, clean, and then continue moving forward. So it's a really great application if you've got a small footprint or you're a smaller venue to help keep your dishes clean and keep service going well. So the next category of dishwashers is a door type dishwasher. This is probably, I would say, the most common commercial dishwasher that you see out in the field. It can be a very versatile and useful piece of equipment. The door type dishwasher really thrives in a setting where you have about 75 to, let's say, 200, 225 seats within a restaurant. It has a 60 to 120 second rinse cycle, so you can really move through volume at a quick pace with that. The other great things about a door type dishwasher, it's small footprint. When we get to the next category, which is a conveyor, you need more space. That's not saying you don't need space for a door type, but if you are working in a small commercial kitchen with a small footprint, you don't always have the luxury to put a conveyor in there. You can put a door type dishwasher in there and comfortably be able to handle, like I said, 75 to 225 seat restaurant. And it's not just for restaurants. We see these in schools all the time. We see these at food pantries. Really, anywhere there's a commercial kitchen, a door type's probably the most common that you will see. So one of the best parts about the door type dishwasher is when you're using it, there's still a manual load and pull process, but all you really need to do, it's very user friendly. You just pull it down, unit automatically clicks on, it runs its cycle, and when it's done, you pull it out and you keep moving on. It's a very user friendly piece of equipment. The third category of dishwasher, which actually we have right here, is a conveyor dishwasher. So this is really a workhorse of a unit. You'll see conveyor dishwashers in high volume restaurants. You'll see them in K through 12 facilities, hospitals, even universities, where you have at least 225 seats. You're supporting multiple lunch periods. You're turning over. You really need to crank through volume. So these units can do up to 250 racks an hour and push volume as you're moving through. It's a very user-friendly piece of equipment where you just put the rack in on the other side, system kicks on, and then you pull it out. So I'd say this is, after the door type, this is one of the most common pieces of equipment that we see from a dishwasher standpoint, just because of how strong and the volume that it can push out. The last big category of dishwashers are your flight type dishwashers. This is an absolute beast of a unit. It can be 10 to 20 feet long depending on the application. And you really see these not necessarily in restaurants, but you see them more in big universities, large hospitals, correctional facilities, banquet facilities, commissary. And really the purpose here is pure volume. You have 1,000 people coming into a banquet facility, you need to move. If you are just working off a conveyor, as we just talked about, can push volume, but it can't handle that type of volume. So if you're working in a very large scale facility, the flight type dishwasher is probably the best suited for you. With that said, when it comes to the flight type dishwasher, there are a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. Even with a conveyor or a door type and undercounter, we can find space in a small footprint. But with a flight type, it's a huge, huge piece of equipment that will need clearance on both sides. You're gonna need the proper utilities, and you're gonna have strategic planning and location of it for it to be successful and for you to get to return on your investment when purchasing one. The only time I've honestly seen a flight type in a restaurant is where it was a restaurant and a hotel. So they had a nice restaurant, but then they also had a large banquet facility tied to it. So that's important. And the other thing that's really important when you're selecting, regardless of dishwasher that you want to pick, is you got to consider what your peak volume time is. You fall more into a 150 seat restaurant, which I already said, a door type would make sense for that. But if you're at peak volume on a Friday, Saturday night, turning that 3-4 times because you're a fast-paced restaurant, you're gonna wanna consider a conveyor dishwasher. But you have to consider, how much am I turning? How many racks am I pushing through in a given hour? What do I need based off of my peak volume? Because otherwise, if you follow the general parameters, you might be setting yourself up for failure, because every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, when you're at your peak volume, you're getting backed up because you don't have the right dishwasher set up for the scale that you're doing in that time. Let's get a little bit more technical. When it comes to the undercounters and the door type dishwashers, the subcategories that you can select from. You have your low temp dishwashers as well as your high temp dishwashers. So low temp dishwashers operate in a maximum heat range of 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. High temp dishwashers have to get to 180 degrees. What's magic about that 180 degree number? That's when bacteria dies. When you're considering a low temp versus high temp, there's a few things that you have to take into consideration. First off, when it comes to upfront costs, low temp dishwashers are more cost effective versus high temp. The high temp, to make it simple, have a little bit more guts to get to that temperature range that you need when it comes to a booster heater or something like that. On the flip side, every dishwasher, high temp or low temp, is going to need chemicals. 3 categories of chemicals. You've got your detergent, you've got your rinse aid, and then third, you have your sanitizer, which kills the bacteria. So when you're working with a low temp dishwasher, you need all 3 chemicals. Anybody that's worked in a commercial facility knows chemicals can become very expensive over time. So when you're working with a low temp dishwasher, you need all 3. When it comes to a high temp dishwasher, you only need the detergent and you need the rinse aid. So as you're going through it and you're making your decision, you might want to do a little cost analysis to see what makes more sense in the long term. Additionally, the other things that you have to take into consideration when using a low temp dishwasher versus a high temp dishwasher is the ventilation. Now, this isn't too important when it comes to undercounter dishwashers, but when you're working with a door type dishwasher or a conveyor dishwasher, if it's a high temp, you're gonna need some type of ventilation. You're getting up to 180 degrees, steam's going to come out. And when you're with a low temp, 120, 140, yes, steam's still gonna come out, but it's not as impactful for the area. When you're high temp, you need a couple things. You either need a condensate hood, which basically will capture the heat, just like an exhaust hood for you have your hot side equipment. You have a condensate hood, which will capture the heat, go out through some duct, and then exhaust out into the air outside. Or when you get to conveyor dishwashers, you see these collars here, over here, and this is where your steam's going to come out. Instead of a condensate hood, sometimes it makes more sense to have direct ventilation. So you would work with a local fabricator, an HVAC company, to build a custom fabricated vents, which typically will come up, pant leg in the middle, and direct vent out an exhaust fan. If you have a high temp, you're gonna need those 2 things, or which we've already talked about in a previous video, there's ventless machines. So door types, conveyors, and even one of the manufacturers out there has a ventless flight type dishwasher. So that's where there's technology that captures the steam, uses that energy to preheat water, and eliminates the need for a condensate hood or a direct ventilation out. So when you're working with a high temp dishwasher, which again are probably the most common out in the industry, you always, always, always have to consider how are you gonna get the steam out? What's the ventilation situation? And then even with low temp, when it comes to ventilation, always consult your local code official. Additionally, when it comes to a high temp dishwasher, how does the water get up to 180 degrees? So you see this down here, this is a booster heater. A lot of the booster heaters now are built into the facility. It's nice here because we can easily call this out. So your water comes in, goes through the booster heater, and it's got to get heated up. Incoming water typically is at 110 degrees or 140 degrees coming in. The most common in the US is 100 degree incoming water. So when considering your booster heater, when you talk to your local dealer or your food service technician, whoever, they're gonna ask you, what rise do you need? What does that mean, right? What's your rise? Your rise is the difference between what your incoming water is and 180 degree temperature you need to get to that kills the bacteria. So if you have 110 degree incoming water, you need a 70 degree rise booster heater. If you have a 140 degree incoming water, you need a 40 degree booster heater. Again, most common is 70 degrees in the US. And if you need to get a temperature reading of your incoming water, or you need to understand what that is, call your local food service repair company, plumber, or even typically a facility director, somebody like that can tell you what that is. So that is a big piece. And if you don't get that right, you're gonna have some problems. You're either gonna have to get a new booster to get to that rise, or you're gonna have to do some additional plumbing work to make sure the incoming water gets to what you need it to be to accommodate the booster in the rise. And again, it varies based on volume. So the booster heater required for a conveyor dishwasher is different versus what you're gonna need for a door type. It can range from like $2,000 to $6,000, even more, depending. So it's a really critical piece that you have to understand when selecting. Other things here, when you're selecting your dishwasher, I cannot emphasize this enough, you gotta understand your utility requirements. Depending where you wanna put your commercial dishwasher within your facility, there's a couple things you need. You're gonna need an electrical supply. So you gotta understand, this dishwasher I'm getting, what is it? If it's a high temp dishwasher, it's typically gonna be like a 208 volt, 240 possibly. If it's a low temp, again, looking at a 208, some come in the 115, 120, but you gotta understand what your supply coming in is, what kind of unit you're getting so that you have the electrical space in the panel to accommodate it. Last thing you want to do is buy a really expensive dishwasher and realize I don't have the electric for it. And not only do you have to consider the voltage, you gotta understand and consider the phase. Do you have 3-phase? Do you want a 3-phase unit? Do you have a single phase? Consider those things. Additionally, obviously, dishwashers require water. Make sure you have a water connection in close proximity. If you don't, consult your local plumber to get a water line run out to support your dishwasher. Make sure you have enough flow coming in to feed the unit so that it operates. One of the most important pieces, and you always gotta consider this because if you don't have it, it can be a problem. As these dishwashers run through cycles, they discharge the dirty water. You have screens and everything to catch the soil before it goes down, so that's not going into your plumbing, but you're gonna discharge very hot water. And it's gonna come out quickly and there's gonna be a lot of it. So you're always gonna need some type of floor drain or possibly safe waste, depending on your setup, that dumps the water in. So this is gonna run. When it's done, it discharges the water. You're gonna wanna make sure you have a floor drain nearby to support the unit. Another piece is the discharge temperature. So when this water discharges, it comes out very hot. And when it comes out really hot, you need to understand what kind of plumbing your pipes are. Back in the day, everything used to be cast iron plumbing. So you could drop whatever water you want down in there and it would just be okay. Now, as the industry's progressed, a lot of your plumbing is now PVC. When this comes out at a certain rate, which is sometimes higher than the melting point of PVC, you can have an issue. So what you wanna understand is, hey, what are my pipes made out of? If it's PVC, you're gonna wanna understand what the temperature rating is for it. And if the discharge is gonna be above that, you're gonna wanna consider getting what's called a drain tempering kit. So a drain tempering kit is what the water will discharge down into, and then when it reaches a temperature that's acceptable to be dropped down, it will not melt the pipes, it'll drop down in. It's not a very expensive piece. Typically, depending on what you're looking for, it's between $500 to $2,000, but it's absolutely worth it versus melting some pipes in your facility. Any facilities that we work on, we recommend the drain tempering kit. It's best practice. And it's not just for dishwashers. If you've got a combi oven or a steamer, you're gonna wanna consider that. I know we threw a ton of information your way. We just wanted to give you as much information as possible of the different types of dishwashers, what to consider when purchasing a dishwasher so that you can make the best decision for your business. If you have any questions at all, comment down here below and we'd be happy to help you make the appropriate selection for your business. As I mentioned about ventless dishwashers, if you want to see what that looks like and how that works into a commercial kitchen with a small footprint, click right here.